And I should kick everybody off first. Oh well. This is her. Keep bobbing our heads, or we could just cut it out and go to the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean is not with us today. Thank God. We've got I know he's watching. We have Chuck Prodonick on here. Deplorable North. You've seen him on military roundups. You've seen him doing solos with Sean. You've probably seen him in a live event or two. Chuck, thanks for coming on and filling
thanks
in.
for having me. Yeah, it's nice
How
to
you
be
doing?
here. I'm good. Things are going well here. If you hear a bunch of loud noises, it's my AC guys are putting in the AC downstairs right now.
And the secret bunker.
In the secret bunker, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's not here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's at another location.
Okay, well, we'll film the next one at that one.
Yeah, that might not be a bad idea.
So, anyway, I'm sure you know how this goes, but we're just gonna hit it fast, and we're gonna go through just what's been going on this week in the news,
Sure.
and as the comments come in, we're gonna read off some of them. I'm gonna be reading off the headlines this week because it's gonna be better for the tech you got going on. So, I mean, it sucks because I don't get to surprise you with how funny these are. I already know how funny they are. Although, I mean, there was one that I wrote that I was literally laughing out loud when I was writing it. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, it's a good thing I didn't make anything too embarrassing for them. That was a switcheroo at the end. Here we go. Here's the first one. Finding the right women. So this is the far-right women contributing to threats against democracy, according to an RCMP report.
Yeah, I saw that one actually the other day on Twitter, and anything now that isn't straight up communist is far right as far as they're concerned. But I mean, we all have heard about women's intuition, right? And I think intuitively right now, women and men, and what really is a woman? But women right now.
Yeah. It's funny, they never really asked that question.
Not before, no. So not, now it doesn't matter what it is. But say you're the one that goes out and does, and I'm not trying to stereotype here because I'm the one in my household that does it all, but you're going out to do groceries, or you're going out to pay bills, or you're doing whatever. Everything costs more, and there's only one factor that we can all point at that's doing that, and that's Trudeau and his government. And I mean, there's that trend you see now on wherever you're looking on social media, and it's people who are taking their, hitting repurchase on like a Walmart bill from four years ago, and it's gone up by 70, 80, 90% in some cases, or higher, depending, so everybody who's
the official inflation rate's only 2.6%.
It's amazing, yeah, because my groceries aren't reflecting that. Neither is my bills. I'm like, nothing's reflecting that, and we all know it. We all know this. They can put out whatever numbers they want, but
I do wish that I'd have gone, thought of it at the time. In hindsight, this would be a great thing to do, and I don't know, maybe I should just do it today and start doing it. The best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
Yeah,
but just go through. Maybe like make a 10-minute video at a grocery store and be like, here's what you're paying and here's how much you're getting, going through a whole bunch of items, and then do it a year later and a year later and a year later. And then when they come out with the official inflation numbers, be like, motherfucker, I've got receipts.
Well, and this is kind of like one of those, I don't want to say it's a nail in the coffin. It's just one more nail in a big old coffin, is these repurchase things that people are going like, This isn't some made up factor. This is like me repurchasing groceries from whatever store. Walmart's a big one. Mm-hmm. And your bill is 4 times what it was 4 years ago. And we're all feeling it. We all know it, It's
and it doesn't even take into account shrinkflation either, right? You're buying one box of Kraft dinner, but is it even the same size?
Yeah, exactly. Well, you look at too, like my kids are in their 20s, And it's funny to hear them speak like old people now, because they'll be like, I only bought this 6 months ago and it's already gone up $1, whatever the thing
Back
is.
in my day.
Back in my day. And it's like, I'm 52. So for me, back in my day was a while ago, but for them, it's months ago. And this is the generation that'll never own a home. Even if you're employed, have good credit and all this other stuff, good luck. Like, I just went through the struggle of selling and buying a home here in Alberta. And, we were just talking about it. The blind bidding on homes is causing stuff to go for 50 to 100K over in this region. And a lot of it is selling sight unseen. You don't even get a chance. If you really want to be a serious bidder on a home, there's a lot of times where there's no home inspection allowed. You're getting it sight as is. One of the homes I went for actually was this kind of a thing. And good luck, because people are desperate. There's nowhere to live right now. We have too many people and not enough. So if you're to go back to the original headline, a woman who's got to look after her family, and you're struggling like we all are, well, there's only one place to point that finger, and we all know.
And that makes you far right.
Makes you far right to want to look after your family at this point, support your family. Yeah.
Yeah. Although I would say it's funny, like, this is it's an interesting thing that they've gone and compiled this list of far right women. If you end up back on the dating scene again, wouldn't it be nice to have that list?
Oh, I've got a list.
Okay. All right. Well, you probably helped make the list. Oh, shoot. I got to do buzzer this week, don't I? Where the hell's the buzzer on this thing? This is fun. All right. Oh, by the way, we got people loving the new Sean. Oh, and some clown here says new Sean looks good. All right. A Smith in review.
Are we talking with Danielle here?
Yes. Yeah, we're going to bring her up again a little bit later on. But for right now, Danielle Smith looks to solidify support ahead of a possible leadership review in November. And so she's already calling around, trying to make sure that she's got people on her team and on her page that are going to support her if and when this leadership review comes around.
Yeah. Well, look, she hasn't gotten everything right. In fact, she's gotten a few things wrong, and we all know that here in Alberta. Recently, they came out with I forget how much the surplus is in the budget right now.
4.6, I think.
4.6, yeah. Give us a break here then. Like, you give us a break. Just cut us some slack at the pump, cut us a little slack wherever. I don't care. I'm not looking for a rebate. I'm not looking for don't give me $500 back in my.
You don't want Smith bucks?
No, I don't want Smith bucks. I want a real break at the pumps. Like, I want a real, we need something to be knocked down somewhere. If you have got the surplus to do it, let's do it. And that was something she campaigned on was, I'm going to give you a break. She campaigned
on lower taxes. Yes. There hasn't been any.
No.
We don't have our own police force.
Yeah.
She's done, I would say that they have done probably the worst possible job in terms of selling the idea of the Alberta pension plan.
Yeah.
Which should, like, literally, you just get somebody breaking down some numbers and the thing sells itself for Albertans. For everybody else in Canada, they're like, we can't let this happen. But for Albertans, it's a no-brainer. It's so simple, and yet they still haven't sold everybody on it. Like, it astounds me that she hasn't even been able, like, you'd think that the NDP and the UCP would be able to go together on this and be like, hey, you know what? This is going to make all of our lives better, unequivocally.
You would think even the NDP who are for the people, this would be for the people. This would be something they could do bipartisan and just wrap it up and be done. Like I said, she's got a long way to go to convincing a lot of us who are supporters of her, and I'm still a supporter of her, but she's got to really do some concrete stuff here other than flipping pancakes at Stampede. Like, well,
I mean, if she wants everybody to support what she's doing, she should be doing things that people support.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
All right. Say, Jan, it ain't so.
This fucking guy.
Chuck, why don't you lead us through this? The ongoing debacle.
So for those who don't know, and I don't know how you wouldn't at this point in Canada, this guy got busted years ago stealing valor. He was essentially laying claim to things that he had no part of.
Mm-hmm.
And those of us that knew better, either from being on the same tours or having friends who were in positions that did know better, and I had several, we knew he didn't plan nothing. He was a reserve officer. You're not planning shit overseas as a reserve officer. You might be involved in certain parts of it, basically photocopying, I would say, but you're not planning anything. You're not the guy moving dots around on the map going, and here's where we will send A unit and B unit and C. No, not a thing. But he was doing some overseas interviews, got busted, finally owned up to it. How he didn't get fired or resign with some shred of decency at that point, none of us can tell. Kind of lays low for a while, and then he gets, that Robert Fife article comes out last week, busting him for essentially ordering our special forces, our JTF2 guys over there, to drop the operations they were doing to get Canadians and our interpreters out. And in the last 24 hours, uses these guys to get these Afghan Sikhs out. Now, look, I don't have a problem with trying to rescue whoever, but that wasn't our responsibility. Not when we're leaving. If we'd gotten all the Canadians out and as many of our Terps out as we could, and he's like, there's another group here that's in real danger from the Taliban. What's a Terp? An interpreter. If that was the case, I still wouldn't really have a great feeling about using our boys to go do it. It was already the Wild West when we were there. It was a complete gong show that last couple weeks.
Well, I mean, you had videos of people like clinging to what do you call it? The landing gear on planes as they're taking off and then letting go a few hundred feet up in the air, because that
was better than being caught by the Taliban at that point.
Yeah.
That's how bad the Taliban are. The Taliban were the original ISIS. Like ISIS learned all their shit from the Taliban. Like, and at certain points, even the Taliban went, "Ooh, the ISIS is pretty bad." But like, so this guy essentially ordered our guys to go after this group, and then it's revealed, which is bad enough. You used our guys as mercs at this point.
Yep.
And then it's revealed that same week that this is happening, he took donations from the World Sikh Organization, from certain members of that group, into his campaign.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you're doing pay for play with people's lives, our soldiers' lives, and
for political gain.
For political gain, our citizens are left behind. Our interpreters are left behind. Those are something like 1,250 Canadians were stranded there and had to be extracted by third-party measures that people don't talk about because it embarrasses the government. But third-party, affiliates had to come in and get them out. The ones that didn't get caught, they don't talk about that either. And that's all hushed right up. So this is a guy with zero honor, says, "Oh no, this story's utter bullshit" at his interview. Well, no, it's not utter bullshit.
And then now he's hiding behind cabinet confidentiality on it.
Yep. Hey. Behind the privacy thing. Yeah.
Now, when it comes to this, we have talked about easy a dozen instances of something looking guilty as hell, and the Liberals saying, "Well, we'd love to show you that we're on the up and up about this, but we can't because of cabinet confidentiality. So you just have to take our word for it."
Yeah. Well, this is the same guy who that week, or when he was questioned about how horribly that evacuation went, he said, "Well, I wasn't checking my emails."
He wasn't.
He claimed
that's new to me. That's new.
That was 100%. That was all over the news as his excuse. That was on the mainstream. He actually said when he was questioned, "How come you're not, directing this evacuation? How come you're not how is this so bad?" Is essentially why he kept getting asked. He goes, "I wasn't checking my emails." Well, he apparently was checking his emails. We know this now because
he was checking his emails he was checking his donation numbers.
He was certainly checking his donation numbers, and he was certainly, directing the leaders of our special forces to do what he wanted them to do. That alone should bring that government down.
There's been easily about 20
Yeah.
That alone should bring the government down with the liberals over since they took over. And Zane Southgate says cabinet confidentiality, the perfect cloak of incompetence. See, I mentioned that I wanted to talk about this a little bit when we were chatting the other day.
Yeah.
I feel like somebody needs to make a good counterpoint to this, because otherwise I think it's the way to go, is just you are, in terms of being a public representative, you're guilty until proven innocent.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's like, just prove to us that you actually did this right. Instead of
100%. Show us your homework.
Instead of being like, this looks dirty as hell, and you being like, well, it's not, and I'm not going to give you the proof. And then because I'm not going to give you the proof, there's nothing to point at me being a bad guy, so I guess I win.
Yeah.
No. Okay, look, you are dirty, you are guilty, and you can show us whatever evidence you want to prove that that's not the case.
Exactly. Just
because
show us
the cabinet confidentiality has been used as a smoke screen for these guys for way too long, and I'm fucking sick of it.
Especially for me personally, especially with this guy. Like, this is a former officer. You know, we all swore an oath. The officers swear an oath. This guy swore another oath as an MP
to the World Sikh Organization.
Apparently, he probably swore one. I mean, if you look at the breakdown of some of the who's married to who in that organization, you know, the two mayors here in Alberta, him, it's so incestuous. You wonder, like they're all now running it, kind of a thing. And he had his finger on the levers that were moving our military around, and this is a guy who used it for pay to play, used our guys as mercs.
He threw the lives of Canadian soldiers at his political donation fund.
Well, it was worth more to him to do that than rescue actual Canadians. That's how bad it is.
Yep. Evidence freeze on hiring freeze. So we talked about this lady a little bit before. I'm going to pull a page out of Sean's book and butcher her name. But Amira El-Gababoué, who is the federal consultant for the reduction of Islamophobia, or something very similar to that, had said that she basically said that Palestinian activists are not getting hired for work, and they're facing it's impacting their careers.
Yeah.
And there's job bans where people just don't want them working for their company because they're Palestinian activists. And she cited exactly 0 examples of this.
Well, they don't have to cite anything. It's like, again, showing your homework. There's no data to back that up. It's a feeling, you know. So the most recent disgusting thing they did was waving the swastika at a protest against I guess there was a Jewish kids baseball game going on, I think in Montreal. And a bunch of the protesters showed up there because how dare the Jewish kids play baseball, and they were waving swastikas, like billboard or poster boards with swastikas on it, you know, comparing them to Hitler again, which is their favorite thing to do. And then they wonder why there's pushback. It doesn't have to be any form of Islamophobia. It's just pushback. Any form of pushback is now considered Islamophobia. And if the Jews push back, when the Jewish community said, like, you're shooting our synagogues, you're firebombing our synagogues and our schools, and now you're showing up to protests with literal swastikas.
Yeah, which is interesting. I mean, one swastika shows up for 5 seconds during a 3-week protest in Ottawa, and everybody there's a white supremacist.
Yes.
And meanwhile, you've got everybody at this protest showing up with swastikas in a prolonged manner, and it's Islamophobia.
And
you ever notice? Isn't it interesting how anything critical of that is Islamophobia, and anything critical of Judaism is just anti-Semitism?
It's not even anti-Semitism. It's just
but Islamophobia.
Yeah.
anti-Semitism.
Oh yeah, but you don't even. Yeah, they can do whatever they want at this point. It seems like they can literally walk around and chant from the river to the sea, which is called Intifada, to kill all the Jews. Wave swastikas around with shitty slogans on their poster boards, and there's nothing. The cops don't intervene. The government doesn't say anything. Very few of them say anything, I should say. The media doesn't cover it, but like you said, you throw one swastika by some random plant at the Freedom Convoy for about a minute. Yeah.
Are we sure that he's a plant? When he was wearing a toque, he had a balaclava and big sunglasses on. He was there for about 30 seconds and then left. Are we sure that was a plant?
And he was photographed by Trudeau's photographer. It's a weird thing. It's a weird.
I mean, Trudeau's photographer photographs all kinds of stuff all the time. It's completely fair and justified.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh, here we go. By the way, Lee Splay, I would not call it incompetence. People like Sajin are working against our country. They should be prosecuted.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
I like this, Glenn, the Harjitter of Doom.
I might borrow that. Yeah.
that is pretty good. And then one race, human race. I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
Oppressing presser. So there was a few of these with this. I think I'll maybe show a few clips out of this, but this was Trudeau's press conference he did at a hockey rink, and you can see here's everybody just spaced right out, so that when the camera's on them, it looks like it's a crowd full of people, but really you can do it with like 6. And then here, just watch this lady in the background.
Are you willing to stay on and lose
members of your caucus?
I think the conversations that I'm having with
look at that
right across the country,
fuck my life.
The bobbleheads in the background, which we've talked about a lot on the show, and it's always like, oh yes, oh that's interesting, oh it's so good. They basically look like Chrystia Freeland all the time in the background.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, this lady is just who presumably was handpicked for this. Because there's only like 10 people on that whole sheet of ice. And even she's just like, oh my God, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, and that's how we all feel at this point. Like, I can't listen to the guy. It just can't be done. Look at, his rally in Montreal the other day with 80 people.
80 people at his fundraiser or whatever it was in Montreal. 80 people in Montreal, dude.
I know.
That's crazy. The other crazy thing about this is that he started, I don't have any examples to pull up, but he started tweeting about Papineau.
Yeah. Yeah.
He never really did that very much because it's always just been like, hi, I'm Trudeau and I'm doing something really important on a national scale. And now I think he's looking down the barrel of possibly losing his seat.
It's possible.
Because finally, he's starting to give a rat's ass about Papineau.
Yeah. Well, fine. He doesn't ever, like you said, he never mentions it any other time. But now I think he's gotten so many, even his little bubble that protects him, like the PMO's office and his little handlers that protect him and say great things to him every day about how much the country loves him.
Fired everybody who tells him the truth.
Exactly. But it's starting to leak in now. Like and the media's actually hit back a little bit at him a little bit recently. Mm-hmm. So he's got to be a little shell-shocked and wondering, well, where's this all coming from? Then they lost in Toronto last week. So he knows, I mean, he's a complete muppet, but he knows that things are not turning the way they should for him. So he's going to look at Papineau. I mean, and then he sees the writing on the wall, how things are turning hard to the right in Europe, minus the UK. That was a shit show yesterday. But you look down in the States too. He's got to be watching that. Is he going to? I can't wait for him and Pierre to have their debates, dude. It's going
to be just like what happened in the States, more or less.
It's basically going to be the same thing.
You know what? I don't know if this is controversial or not. You make me, gun to my head, pick one. I would take Biden over Trudeau.
Oof. Yeah, maybe. Only because he's he doesn't really know what he's doing anymore. Instead of it being,
Are we sure about that?
It's his handlers running it now. He doesn't know if he came out to an interview yesterday with food all over his jacket. Like it's just a shame at this point. Like the guy doesn't know where he is. He claimed to be the first woman president yesterday in an interview. Like he's just, he's Joe Biden all over the place. He's just, it's bad. And I know people are going, well, he's got dementia. You shouldn't make fun of him. No, he's got 50-year track record of being an absolute shitty human. I'm going to make fun of him. I don't care.
Yeah. All right. The greatest show on earth.
I'm on it.
Thanks, man. I was speaking specifically of the Calgary Stampede and how they're making the Stampede great again.
Yeah.
By not having Trudeau attend this year.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too that so his handlers didn't know what to do about that, or at least his information people, because he was supposed to go. Like there'd never been
it's an established tradition. It goes back decades. Like I tried to figure out exactly how far back it went, and once you get into Crescent, there just isn't enough internet there.
Yeah.
But like even Paul Martin used to go before Harper went, and then Harper, being in Calgary, went every year, and then Trudeau went every year except for 20 and 21 because of COVID. But I mean, when I say went, it's very loosely. Like even last year, we talked about the glowing article that was incredibly dishonest, where it said that there was people clamoring to get selfies with him during the Stampede. He went before the Stampede opened in the morning, and he did a few pictures with Bissonnel and Shahal and Jody Gondek, and then he got a couple pictures with a couple basically plants, and then did a pancake breakfast right by the airport, and then was on a plane and gone before anybody knew he was there.
100%. Yeah.
That's him showing up for the Stampede, and the Calgary Herald never called him out on it. And then even this article, they were talking about the same thing that happened last year, but still being incredibly dishonest about it. And so, I'd heard a rumor that he was actually going to be in the parade. I was like, oh, that would be so awesome, because it's televised.
Last week.
What's that?
You mean the parades last week?
Not those parades. The Stampede has a parade. Yes. And so anyway, and then I imagine that he just kind of said, well, I need something to turn this around, so I'm going to go in front of the parade. And his handlers probably found a very delicate way of saying that would be more or less fucking political suicide.
Yes. In Alberta, with cowboys around, no, the absolute demographic that hates you the most. Don't parade yourself in front of them. But now I saw on the Twitter this morning that some of his handlers are trying to play it off as like, well, he's doing some stuff with NATO. He's meeting some NATO people. Yeah, there's that NATO summit that's happening over 2 days, and he's going to be there for 4 days. Yeah. And the Stampede goes for, I think, 11 or 12 days. 11 or 12 days still, yeah. Yeah, so no matter how it fits, there's still a really big window. And keep in mind, this is during the summer, so they're not even sitting in Parliament. He has nothing but time for this. And it involves two of his favorite things. One, flying somewhere for fucking free, and two, dressing up in a stupid costume. Yeah, 100%. Which really are his favorite things, is delving into that tickle trunk, which is probably why Sophie left him. But nobody at NATO gives a shit that he's there. Like everybody at NATO has now come out at some point or other in the last couple of years and said, dude, just step up funding. You step up your funding, make an actual military. But no, we got a new we have a new CDS now who's we're gonna get to that. Yeah. All right. Okay. But yeah, so that's what's going on with the Stampede. By-election reflection. Mm-hmm. And here's a little bit more of that whole
we like to say people kind, not necessarily mankind.
Yes.
More inclusive.
There we go. Exactly. Yes, thank you.
And the budget will balance itself.
Man, you are one pathetic loser. No offense.
Great movie, by the way.
What's that?
Great movie, by the way.
Oh, yeah. phenomenal movie. So the Liberals, after their stunning and brave by-election loss in Toronto, like right in the middle of it, that was probably the best part.
Yeah.
It's like the riding right in the goddamn middle of the
Yeah.
map of Toronto.
Yeah.
Where they had, I think, 16 cabinet ministers on foot knocking on doors trying to shore up support, which tells me, by the way, that they knew leading into this that it was going to be a loss.
Yeah.
And they National News Watch, Liberal MP suggests party needed stronger ground game in Toronto St. Paul's vote.
How
They
much
think that
stronger
they
did
lost.
they need?
They think they lost in Toronto St. Paul because they didn't get enough people knocking on enough doors, despite the fact that they had 16, not even just backbenchers, which they probably had all kinds of them, but they had 16 cabinet ministers knocking on doors. And then you've got all this fallout now where all the Liberals want to sit the fuck down with Trudeau and figure out what the fuck's going on.
Yeah.
Because out of the, I don't know, roughly 150 of them, roughly 100 are looking down the barrel of losing their jobs.
Exactly.
And
yeah,
as much as Trudeau is the face of the Liberal Party, when 2/3 of that thing are going to stop existing, they're probably, I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop on this as to when the all-out fucking revolt happens.
Well, that's a good question. I think we're all waiting on that, and part of it might be already this trickle of former MPs in the last 2 weeks. Another one this morning, and it was Garneau, in his tell-all.
Yeah, he released memoirs.
I don't know if they're all out yet, but the excerpts are, and he's got nothing kind to say about Trudeau. And it's funny now. Everybody wants to go like, good for you, Garneau, or good for you, whoever came out. They all propped him up when they were there.
Years just towing the company line.
Propping him up. Yeah, propping him up. And I understand it on one part where Garneau says, I'm paraphrasing here, but he says, I tried to give him some input. I tried to give him advice. He wouldn't hear it. His handlers wouldn't even let us get near him. So on one level, I kind of get it. You got to play that, right? But I would hope that the Conservative MPs would break rank at that point. Go be independent. Go citizen independent if you're not being heard. Rank.
Last election, Aaron O'Toole said that the Conservative MPs needed to each individually support the carbon tax, and if they didn't, they were out of the goddamn party. And every single one of them went along with it.
It's true.
Including my MP, Blake Richards, who's the party whip. It was his job as party whip, my fucking MP, to go around and make sure that everybody was on board with that.
Yeah.
And then you look at all the weird stuff that's happening in the Conservative nomination races, where people who actually, it seems like the people who would want to represent their local constituents get edged out in favor of hand-picked people who are just going to toe the line.
Yeah. Well, O'Toole was a big problem for a lot of years, and he got a buy because he's ex-military. Well, everybody who was ex-military that I knew was like, he was a fucking Air Force captain. He didn't deploy anywhere. He has no medals. Well, he's got his CD, but that's a gimme. That's like, I did 12 years. Good for me. Like, that's a showing up for 12 years type thing, which he did, which isn't particularly hard in the Army because you can't really get fired. So, like, give me a break. Like, we all knew, like, I'm not knocking the Air Force here. I'm just saying he was a captain in the freaking Air Force with no tours. Like, give me a break. Like, this is good. There's no leadership there. You might as well be just
you may as well just be a PFC or something.
100%. You're essentially a glorified corporal in an army trade. Like, there's so many captains in the Air Force, they don't know what to do with them all. But his leadership style reflected that too. Like, he was so waffling, and not just about that thing, but even the gun thing. He waffled about that at the end too, and we were all like, "Are you kidding me, dude? Like, you got to." There's no light.
This one's a slam dunk.
Yeah, the dude is just junk. He's utter junk. But yeah, I don't know what to say. I think that the Leslie Church getting trounced out of there the way she did, especially with the ground game that those cabinet members gave her, very publicly gave her. It shows the trend that's coming, thankfully.
Yeah. All right. Unmarked grave stories need to be put in an unmarked grave.
Yeah.
So from the Aboriginal People's Television Network, it's shocking. Pimisika Kamek, I screwed that up, I'm sorry. Cree Nation says 187 anomalies discovered at former school. And it goes on to say that they're proof of genocide. They're proof of nothing.
They're proof of nothing unless you got bones and bodies. I mean,
dig a hole. Dig a hole. Like you're doing everybody a disservice.
Yeah.
In this.
Yeah.
It's not
because you know what? You, me, and pretty much most other people out here in Canada understand that they've been mistreated for generations, that the residential school thing was a fucking horrible idea.
Yep.
A horrible liberal idea, by the way.
Yep. Also a great point to make.
But it does them a disservice. Look, I've got a lot of experience with mass graves. A fair bit more than the average person with mass graves in several different countries. And I can tell you, just using Kosovo as an example, they brought in forensics teams to prove certain things in certain areas. That we had to go guard these guys when they were doing it. Some of them were from that famous FBI dead farm, you know, where they watch bodies that
where they put them out in different places and let them decompose for a while
in different situations. So some of these guys are those guys.
Fascinating.
These guys are really interesting yet morbid dudes to talk to. Anyway, they had all so this is back in '99. They had all the equipment you needed to tell within minutes what was in the ground. They knew. And then they do some digging and they'd be like, oh, here's what we're dealing with, or there's fuck all here. Look, I'm pretty sure in, what are we, 2024, we have the technology or maybe even a shovel to dig some stuff up and find out. Because if there are graves, we should all know about it and somebody should roll for it. Somebody should.
Absolutely.
But to sit there and do this blah, you know, nobody is all crying wolf now and nobody's going to believe it.
And you're turning people off of all kinds of other things. Oh, well, first they were complaining about the unmarked graves and now they're complaining that they don't have clean drinking water. And there goes all of your sympathy and goodwill. Yeah. Right.
And look, they don't need our sympathy. They need actual progress.
No,
and
okay.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you're 100% right. They are going to lose that empathy that most regular Canadians have for people and for them. But there better be some digging and find something, or don't find something, but don't just throw out this blanket.
And then especially to talk to it as definitive proof. And it's interesting. Like there was this CBC article. History of residential school cemeteries is evidence of genocide. Well, I mean, technically it's not, but they're talking about all these mass graves and they've got these pictures that are disturbing. This is a picture from 1908. And it says in the bottom, students in the Dunbow Cemetery, blah, blah, blah. But where else was it? It says it in the article. Maria highlighted 3 images in the report that she described as highly sensitive. The faces of children in the photos are blurred in the report to hide their identities. This is a photo of children from 120 years ago.
Yeah.
And you're going to do this to hide their... Who in the world is going to look at a 120-year-old photo of a child and be like, oh, yeah, I know, that's Bill. No fucking, like, it's so silly. And then here's the next picture. So they're talking about how this is just, all these pictures are evidence of mass graves. And they've got a minister and then a whole bunch of children, pallbearers, carrying a casket. Now, you're an expert on mass graves. How many caskets are in most of the mass graves?
I didn't see a one. No.
Right. Well, that's exactly it. I would expect to see 0 caskets in a mass grave.
No, you just see people piled into each other. So I'm not, because this one hasn't been physically dug up yet, and I don't know if they intend to or if they just want to leave that overhanging narrative going. I don't know what they're going to do with that. The mass graves I've dealt with, they weren't laid out pretty. They weren't laid out individually. They were dumped in literally like you would dump in anything.
Yeah.
Have you seen that movie Civil War?
Captain America Civil War?
No. The new one that came out there about the American Civil War, like about the modern American Civil War. There's a mass grave scene in that's actually shockingly realistic as to how it happens, that's what mass graves are. Now, I'm not, did some people get buried somewhere around there? Maybe, possibly. Are there 100?
I would be surprised if there weren't.
I would be too, because I grew up on a dairy cattle farm, a 400-acre dairy cattle farm. There were families from previous farmers from 100 and something years ago buried out there, and we all knew where the markers were. That's not uncommon across Canada, if you were to look hard enough. But they need the definitive proof, and then go hang somebody for it. I'm all for that. Have some of that, but don't leave the narrative hanging forever like this last one out in BC.
Right. Grooming is a good thing. We're going to go to the CBC here for a minute. Large proportion of military disliked relaxed rules on personal grooming, survey finds. Chuck.
So that was an interesting one. It was stupid that they did it in the first place. But I think that when they broke it down by
what did they do?
And what's that?
What did they do?
Well, they broke it down. So they broke the survey down by element, the one that I saw, and I think it was like over 56 or 60% of the ones in the Army said this is stupid. And then you had like the Navy and Air Force were like, oh, this is not a bad thing. Like they were more they were more accepting of it because
okay, but what was it?
Basically, you could have face tattoos, you could grow whatever stupid beards you wanted, and hair all over the place. Like you didn't. Their uniforms, you could just see in pictures of these guys now, they look like civvies that have been put into uniform. Mm-hmm. We used to make fun of the Dutch military because they have a union and they all look like slobs, and they kind of were. Because if you look like a slob, you're a slob. That's the Army. And so they took this, look, it's called dress and deportment. So how you dress and your deportment goes a long way to how you're going to perform. It's a building block. It's a military building block. I don't care when you go to work, wherever you work, I'm sure most people show up and there's a dress and deportment. Like you can't have rips in your jeans. You can't, if you're wearing. You
should have a shower at some point in the couple days leading up to your shift.
Pretty critical. They probably don't let you have a face tattoo depending on your job. Depending if you're wearing personal protective equipment, you probably don't get to have a big shaggy beard, Well, in the Army, you had to be shaved because you wear gas masks for training and for real life shit. But they didn't care. This was just, let's see who we can get in the Army with this and who we can retain because we're letting them look like slobs. Well, as soon as you take that building, now I had friends who've just recently retired, who I served my whole career with. They were in 30 plus years. They were in charge of units. These were dudes who weren't still pushing brooms. These were dudes who were in charge of units who had given up hope. They're like, we can't reprimand anybody for anything anymore. The second we do, there's always some sort of harassment suit or harassment investigation. These guys are just showing up. They look like shit. They act like shit. You can't train them to do shit. And that's the state of our military. Now, you look at the guys over in Latvia right now, and I'm not saying all of them, but such a large portion of them are guys who would have been on remedial PT because they're fat slobs who look like slobs. And these are our frontline guys. Are you kidding me? No.
Do you think it was the Chinese and the Russians that infiltrated the military and got us to switch over to a lackadaisical attitude so that we'd be pushovers in oncoming conflicts?
I think the Chinese more than the Russians. The Chinese have definitely, obviously, infiltrated our government. We know there's at least 11 members who are now beholden to them. We know this. And all they had to do was influence enough of the culture in the military. Everybody talks about culture in the military like it was some horrible, horrendous thing. This male patriarchy bullshit that they go on about. Listen, were there issues there? Are there always going? Yeah, it's the military. But it needs to be tough. It needs to be exclusive. And it needs to be something that isn't for everybody. Look, I went up against the Taliban a lot with dudes who were probably not that shiny and Boy Scouty, and they weren't bad dudes. And I'm not a bad dude, but we weren't Boy Scouts. And that's what you want going up against the worst people in the world. We're going to send these guys in Lafayette. They're going to get speed rolled by the Russians if that ever comes to the fruition it looks like NATO wants. They'll get bumped. They're going to be rolled over. You think the Russians give a fuck about your dress and deportment? Like, dude, they're going to roll over our guys who are fat, out of shape, look like shit, act like shit, and can't train for shit. Like,
and rainbow camo isn't really a great way to deploy.
I wish, look, I talk this way because I wish our military wasn't in this condition. It doesn't need to be in this condition. It should be difficult. You should want to do it, and it should be exclusive. I'm not saying male exclusive or white male exclusive. Look, I served with dudes from every conceivable background. You look at any picture of me in the Army or the documentary, there's dudes from every background represented. But they were the best at what they could do. They were tough. They could haul their weight. They didn't care about their feelings getting hurt. Because when the Taliban's yelling over the wall, telling you in broken English, we're coming for your
You're
head.
misgendering me.
Yeah. Please stop throwing the grenades at me. You know, that like those are the guys that you want facing off whoever we're going to face off against next. Not this broken, out of shape, dysfunctional thing.
See, and that just seems like a staff sergeant obvious thing to me.
Well, if they, yeah.
All right. Here we go. What's the worst that could happen? All right, we're going to put this up here real quick. This is some attempted arsonists who I've obviously never lit a burning barrel in their lives because they threw a bunch of gas on it, lit themselves on fire. Well, the one guy lit his pants are on fire and it's all burning. Like I haven't seen somebody with pants on fire like this since the last time Trudeau opened his fucking mouth.
Yep.
And the cops are on the lookout for them.
Well,
Richmond
didn't go to a burn unit somewhere. Like that's not rub a little butter on it type of burns. That's like your skin's coming off kind of burns. So I don't know.
No,
I don't know.
That smells like a barbecue.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, dude's got friends and family. Are they not going to notice him show up with like charcoal legs now at this point, or his junk burned off? It looks like a guy.
Well, yeah, that's exactly it. It'd be like, yeah, we're gonna put out an APB. Has anybody had their dick burned off recently?
Yeah, I don't know. Like it seems like they put out these "please help us" tweets all the time. Like, please help us find this guy, and you're like, my guy. Like you're not looking very hard.
How do you not find this guy?
Yeah.
Legacy Media's unexpected demise.
Oh, that was a beauty there.
This one's got to come up again here. So the headline reads, this is CTV. An Afghan woman wanted to be a doctor. Now she makes pickles as the Taliban restricts women's roles. And the picture, for those of you listening along, is a woman in a hijab at a sewing machine.
Yeah, it's pretty relevant. Yeah, I don't understand.
She's making pickles with a sewing machine.
When I saw this one the other day, I had to read it a couple times and be like, I must be missing something here. Is there a pickle on this machine somewhere? Am I like, what's going on? Yeah, it's the weirdest. They couldn't pull a better picture. They couldn't
like just have a jar of pickles or just a generic woman in a hijab instead of a woman at a sewing machine. This is how dumb our legacy media is, and we pay for this. We give them subsidies to continue doing this, which is nice for us because now we've got something to talk about. But seriously, we deserve a better class of journalism.
It is articles like this that do kind of still break my heart and a lot of other veterans' hearts who, in the times that we were there, you could see some progress for the females. And you know, I got asked in an interview by some reporter somewhere. We always used to have reporters embedded with us at least until the fighting started, and then they found somewhere else to be. They asked like, well, how are you going to win war, this overall war. And I remember it wasn't just me. There's a bunch of us. We're like, unless you give women internet access and like cell phones and all this other shit and give them that ability to organize, there will be no change here. This is a Stone Age culture, Afghanistan. I'm talking about specifically in Afghanistan. They still live in a way in most of the places that have not changed in 2,000 years. Women have no chance there. They just have no chance unless they have an ability to organize, and they can't now. They could while we were there. They're done for now. I mean, they're back to the Stone Age again.
Well, and it's not like they can drive somewhere else.
No,
because they're women.
No, they get stoned to death. They get killed outright. Yeah. We
That's probably just the insurance companies, though.
Yeah. I feel bad for I feel bad that they weren't able to stand that country up. There's a lot of
this is the same legacy media that during that botched evacuation 3 years ago was saying that this is going to be a new day, a new dawn for the women in Afghanistan, because
it sure was.
And they got it incredibly right in the worst possible way.
But one of my other favorite Sean's is Sean Ryan with the Sean Ryan Show, former Navy SEAL, CIA guy down in the States. He recently had a guy on with Inside Knowledge who talks about that the Biden government literally airlifts cash to the Taliban every week, like 35 to 40 million a week, just to keep them from going crazier. Basically, it's basically please behave money.
It's extortion money.
It's extortion money, and
it'd be a shame if something was to happen to this Stone Age culture.
Yeah. They had such you look at Afghanistan going back to the 60s, 70s, pre-Russian time in the 80s. Women were running around in jeans. They could go to university. They could do stuff. The country as a whole was doing okay for where it is, what it is. And then things happened, and
there's no going back.
No.
Well, even this. So Canada Revenue Agency, they've deleted this tweet for some reason, but CRA, literally your tax people, Bello Banana Babble Choppa Mukalaka Unana # Canadian Tax # Despicable Me 4.
It sounds like a Biden quote.
Well played.
I saw that too.
This is what we pay for.
This is what we pay for. They come after for me and you if we're, I always wind up owing. I just always do. It's I can't hide enough of it. But there was that big article a couple weeks ago about the $64 million that they'd lost in a scam, basically. And they're not even trying to get that back. Like, they gave up on it. Like,
Well, Mark Cuban lost a bunch in a scam recently, too.
Yeah.
Mark Cuban fell for the Nigerian prince thing.
Yes, he did. And he's such a smart man, that guy.
Yeah. All right, next one. Olympic racial segregation. So the Olympics are coming to Paris right away. We were talking before about the high levels of poop in the river and how that might affect the swimming events. And this is the latest thing. They had decided that they weren't, in an effort to save the environment, they weren't going to air condition any of the rooms that the Olympic athletes were staying in. And so all of the normal ass countries said, okay, well, we're just going to bring in portable air conditioners.
Yeah.
And countries like Uganda, which is specifically named here, said, we can't afford that. We don't have deep pockets. And so now you've got this two-tiered system in the Olympics where only the rich people get air conditioning and Uganda doesn't, which, I mean, to be totally fair, though, they're probably used to the heat.
Yeah, you would think, but I see what they're saying too. Like, for one, this climate bullshit about the AC thing, it's just virtue signaling that's now gotten away from them. So they're stuck with either letting people have their rich people AC, or you don't get no AC, or they go backwards and give everybody AC, where they look like even bigger fools. But the thing is, the thing is with this right now, they're not going to win anybody over. They've now gone so far down the middle with it all. Nobody's on their side because they've now pissed off the poor countries that can't afford AC. So the virtue signaling there is lost. And the rich people who can afford it are just going to put them in there anyway and still virtue signal. But this is Paris. What do you expect?
I couldn't have put it any better myself. Unions fucking up everyone's shit. This has been a hell of a week for unions.
Yes.
You've got the WestJet mechanics that went on strike. So recently, Seamus O'Regan and the Liberals with the NDP passed this no scab law. It's illegal for when workers are on strike. It's illegal for companies and federally regulated companies, I think it is, to bring in scabs.
Yeah.
And they love throwing the term scab around.
Yes, they do.
Here's the thing. I don't know who needs to hear this, but a scab is a body's natural reaction to an infection, to trauma.
Yeah.
It's how it heals. How it makes itself whole again. A scab is not a bad thing. A scab is healing.
Yeah.
And it's the opposite of a union. I don't think they're getting the same message that they think they're getting across.
No. You know what?
Yeah.
I think people are getting sick of big unions at this point. That's all I hear from anybody is like, it's just not. You look at the WestJet one, the LCBO one that's happening now in Ontario.
That's the other one here too now, is that they said they're going to close down all the liquor stores for 2 weeks. I thought liquor stores were essential. Didn't I remember hearing something like that a little while ago?
They wrote specific policy to leave those open and shut down like food, gyms. But the LCBO needed those liquor stores open. Well, they're federal employees, which I don't think I truly understood. And I was raised in Ontario, but I don't think I truly understood what that meant. Like they're basically cashiers on a federal pay scale, is what they are.
And so anyways, but they're mad because they think that once Doug Ford opens it up so that other places of business, convenience stores, grocery stores, whatever else can also sell alcohol, that people are going to choose to buy it there instead of their store. And that's going to mean that fewer stores or fewer shelf stockers or whatever else are needed. And there's going to be job losses. And I just find it interesting that their solution is we need to be guaranteed our jobs.
Yeah.
Well, what if you're not doing anything? Well, what do we have you do? And instead of saying, well, we're all going to lose our jobs because no one's going to want to work at no one's going to want to shop at our shitty store if they have choices. None of them are saying, well, you know what? The unions aren't saying we need to look at this and try and make these stores as good and competitive as possible. That's how you do it. That's how you solve it.
But because it's a government-run thing, that's not.
But their mindsets, it's totally out to lunch. Like this, I might get in some trouble for this. So the trucker, the blue collar roundtable that was all truckers that Sean had the other day. It was really good. It was interesting. But the one guy was dead set that trucking needs to be recognized as a trade, and he talks about the amount of knowledge that's out there and how it's not being transferred. And he never really asked himself, are there any alternatives that could have the same effect? And the interesting thing is that he could make $7 million if he just wrote a book that had all that knowledge in it. He could create a course. And then that course, if it's done well and received well, becomes the gold standard for the industry and everybody adopts it. But his knee-jerk response was, well, we need to get the government to solve this problem.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you're sitting on not only the solution, but a way to make a shit ton of money at the same time. You've got this golden opportunity.
Yeah.
Go for it and tell the government to look at something else entirely while you just make off like a bandit while improving the entire industry at the same time.
Yeah. It isn't, but people feel like there's guaranteed money if the government gets involved. So if he brings this thing to the government,
why do you think that is, Chuck?
Well, because
there's guaranteed money every time the government gets involved.
Yeah, that's what it is.
All right. Oh, shoot. There we go. All right. Experts on everything but accountability. Oh, and by the way, the Cargill strikers are running out of money because they've been striking so long, and now they're going to the food banks. From the Toronto Star, which is always a bastion of quality journalism.
Yep.
Excuse me, especially from Bruce Arthur, who,
Oh yeah, he's a
to
beauty.
put it nicely, is a piece of shit.
Mhm.
I hope you're listening to this, Bruce. People should be afraid. Pierre Poilievre's conservatives have been targeting experts. Is this just the beginning? And then the article talks about this doctor who was testifying about safe supply and very loosely skirting around a truth that anybody with two brain cells is going to figure out. When the safe supply stuff is being stolen or sold to drug dealers and then making its way all the way across Canada to be distributed illegally. And she's saying, well, no, it's not happening to kids. The kids aren't getting a hold of this stuff. Like, just because there's no direct evidence of it, which it would be really hard to get direct evidence of something like that. And just because there's no concrete evidence, it's very easy to say that if some kids are buying drugs and a lot of the drugs are coming from the safe supply places, there's going to be, logically speaking, at least a few instances where this happens. And then they talk about how Poilievre was calling out the economists who were being paid by the Liberals to say these things. And for anybody that's listened to the last few mashups, we even broke down how some of the economists get paid by other economists who get paid by the government. And then even a few weeks before that, how Dwayne Bratt was saying that if the government of Alberta specifically in that case was getting too involved, people are going to be worried because they're just going to say, they're going to be required to say what the people giving them the funding have to say.
Yeah.
Which is exactly the point we've been making this whole time. And how many times have you seen the word expert in a tweet or an article, Chuck, and just been like, fuck, here we go again?
Well, the word has lost all meaning since the when happened like 4 years ago. That word means nothing to anyone anymore. You might as well be a used car salesman or whatever. It means nothing because it just means that you're being paid for by the government to say something at this point. That's all it is.
Yeah, and then the government touts you out as being an expert.
Yeah.
And it's never pointed out in any of these news articles or news clips or anything like that, that the guy that's saying this thing from the Liberal Party and the guy who's coming on to back up what he's saying have a financial relationship between the two of them.
Well, and that's it. Your government-funded expert is on the government-funded media telling you what the government-funded narrative is. So that's. And go back to the safe supply thing. Like from what I understand, and I could be wrong, one of the reasons they didn't want to make the drugs trackable, depending on the medium that the drug is given to you in, whether it's pill form, needle form, whatever the heck, there are methods that they could have used to put a signature on the stuff, essentially.
Yep.
From what I understand, they chose not to, because then you would know within ounces and kilograms how much is hitting the illegal market. They already know that a lot of it is. I mean, some of the people that they're busting are like, well, I got this from so-and-so, and this is...
Yeah, well, I mean, we've covered, there was this big bust in Ontario of stuff that came from BC a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And then you've got this lady, Dr. Andrea Sereda, physician safer supply subscriber. And she's even got tattoos on her arms. I don't want somebody with tattoos to be my doctor. Like, it's just despicable. I don't want them cooking my food. I don't want them on my show.
Too late.
Biggest burgers ever. So Bidenomics, 4th of July family cookouts reach record high of 71.22. So this is one of the things that I actually like in terms of price tracking.
Mhm.
Is that because it stays apples to apples year over year.
Yeah.
It's not the random bag of goods. It's not how Trudeau in 2019 changed the way the poverty calculation was made so that all of a sudden there was a drop in poverty. He didn't he went from the old method used to be that it was the amount of people living below half of the median income were in poverty, which roughly speaking meant that 25% of Canadians would always be literally living in poverty. Because if it was the percentage of them living under 25% of, well, living under half of the median income.
Yeah.
So you'd expect under a population distribution and under an even population distribution that would always be roughly 25%. And then he said, okay, well, let's move to this mixed basket of goods calculation. And then after that, our poverty rates are way down. Like, yeah, but it's completely different math. Whereas this, it's an annual thing in the States they do where they say, how much money does it cost for you to cook up a bunch of food for the 4th of July?
Yeah.
And it's at a record high of $71.22 for 10 guests. And so beef is up 11%. Sorry?
If you could feed 10 people for $71 for a meal, I wish I had their grocery problem.
That's US dollars too, though, right?
Still call it 100 then.
Okay, but it's also the idea is that you're making this stuff from scratch, right? Because you're looking at ground beef. You're not looking at, buying pre-made burgers, which I mean, make them yourself. They're way better anyway,
Always
right?
better, yeah.
But this is nice. I like the fact that there's little nuggets of this stuff every once in a while that you come across where, hey, we can have a consistent conversation about what this actually looks like year over year. Because even though their official inflation rate is somewhere right around ours, like, okay, well, this is up 11% and that's up 12%. And then the two exceptions were chicken, which was down 4%, and potato salad, which is down 4%. So, yeah, I mean, the potatoes are always cheap.
Mm-hmm.
CSIS Paradrop. Oh, I missed one. Shoot. This would be a really good one, too. We're not at CSIS Paradrop yet. We're about the intoxicated Kootenai man chooses jail over going home with wife.
I didn't see that one. I missed that one.
All right. I just put it in this morning.
Oh, yeah.
But here's actually, you know what? I'll read the whole thing because it's a very short article, but quite telling, if you will. Police in the Kootenays say a man opted for the drunk tank rather than home during an interaction with officers last month. RCMPs say they were called on June 23rd for report of an intoxicated 26-year-old trail man stripping down and causing a disturbance in the 1100th block of Bay Avenue in downtown Trail. The officer located the man face down on the pavement and refusing to go home despite being surrounded by wife and friends. RCMP say the man's wife and friends were willing to take care of him at home. However, the man declined and chose jail. The officer arrested and lodged him in the cell block at the Trail Detachment until sober. He was released to his wife the next day when he was sober. I'd probably would have stayed in the cell block for my own safety if my wife was waiting for me after a night like that.
He probably chose
Sergeant
wisely.
Mike Wisentowicz in a news release.
I mean, that's a pretty Canadian story. The guy probably chose wisely.
Oh, my wife's gonna kill me. No. I'll go to jail instead.
Yeah, probably a smart move.
Okay, now we're at the CSIS Paradrop. So this is David Vignault, the director of CSIS, is now stepping down after having been there for 20 years.
Yeah.
It's interesting. They've had a very tumultuous past year or so.
Yes.
Even Trudeau going so far as to call them liars.
Yes. So I was going to say, whenever he needs to shift something, he'll be like, well, CSIS said. But whenever he needs to go the other way, he immediately is like, well, you can't trust what they say. That's why I don't read their notes. Like, he doesn't read their notes.
But he knows what they said.
He knows what they said. Yeah.
I mean, Marco Mendocino specifically said that they invoked the Emergencies Act because of CSIS's recommendation. And CSIS said, no, we did not say that at all. And so, after I'm surprised. The only thing that really surprises me about this is that it hasn't happened sooner. And
I am
actually
too.
the second thing is that it was very polite. It wasn't, this place has become a shit show. Our government has lied multiple times. We are hamstrung from doing our job. There's no fucking point in me showing up to work every day. So I fucking quit. Peace out. Good luck, you fucking pricks.
Other than his very grammatically horrible resignation letter that he did. I mean, I think he's misspelled Canadian in it as well. Like he actually, it's a pretty bad.
Yeah, he did actually. Canadian with an E.
Yeah, he might have been like in such a fury to just write this thing and get out the door. He might have just, we all do it when we're tweeting or whatever. But I'm surprised, but not surprised that he was polite on the way out the door, because who knows what the repercussions could be. But I expect we'll hear from him at some time in the future. He might
maybe he'll write his own memoirs.
I would say that it'd be interesting if he did. Yeah, it's interesting timing. Very interesting timing, him leaving now.
Yeah, and then Trisha Rue was talking about the last article. He knew jail would be easier than the wrath of his wife.
Yeah,
and Trisha. I wonder if Sean's ever had a similar instance. Not Sean Newman, her husband Sean.
Oh,
but Sean Newman, actually, now that I'm wondering about that. The next one, immigration problem solving itself.
Sure.
Nearly 40% of new Canadians say they're considering leaving their province or Canada over high housing costs.
Well, we were just talking about, like, good luck. I'm an established adult human who can buy things, and I had a very difficult time getting a home. Like it's not easy right now. It's great if you're selling, and of course to buy you're selling usually. But I mean, so if you're an immigrant who isn't maybe as founded here or not, or as established here,
yep.
It's like our younger generation. Good luck. Like really good luck.
Oh, they're totally fucked. Like basically their only chance for owning a home is to get gifted a small parcel on the edge of a farm and build it yourself.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, to be fair, there's lots of people that did that back in the day.
My parents are still in Ontario on 400 acres wanting me to go build a home there. And I'm like, it's fucking Ontario. I'm not going back there. But, that's kind of how things were done, or you would pass a piece of property down. And now you see, you not to go off on a different thing, stay on the immigration side of it, I guess, for now. But they're even buying up hotel. They're looking to buy up hotels in Ontario to house them because there's nowhere to put them.
Yeah.
There's just, I have a solution to that. Don't let them in or send them back, because why should you and I fund purchasing?
Would it really be the end of the world for us to say, you know what, we're full? Check back in a few years.
Yeah, come back in a few years.
And this isn't racist, because it's not like, oh, we don't want any of the Mexicans coming in, but we'll take in the Puerto Ricans and the El Salvadorians.
Yeah.
We're saying everybody can just fuck off for a little bit. Give us a minute to catch our breath. Check back in a little bit. And if we freed up a few spots, sure.
But it's no longer merit-based immigration. It's these visas, these student visas. It's all this. I mean,
it's Roxham Road. It's all kinds of things that are just irregular immigration.
This is summertime job. Every guy I know, every person I know, family I know with kids who are like just out of school for the year, can't get a job. And there's a reason for that. And we all know what the reason for that is. It's because we've brought in about 800,000 extra people a year for the last several years. There are no summer jobs available. You notice, I didn't see it. I might have missed it. But remember every year the Liberals would roll out this big summertime job program, and we're going to get you a summertime job, fucking raking leaves somewhere, whatever it was. They don't roll that out anymore because there are no summer jobs. There are no, kids aren't going to work at the local pool anymore or the local Timmy's anymore.
Well, because there's somebody else who's taking that job. They're taking
gone.
our jobs. They're not taking our jobs, though. They're taking our kids' jobs.
They're taking our kids' jobs.
The argument's a little bit different. Okay, I'm calling an audible. We're gonna circle back to Biden real quick, but I feel like this is gonna factor in real well with what we were just talking about, and that is public sector blowing the fuck up. So what's driving Canadian wage growth? All those federal government employees. It talks about how the public sector since 2019 has grown by over 17%, and business sector grew by I think 3% over the same amount of time. All the new jobs that are being created are government jobs. And I did a little quick math, which is aside from this article. And since 2019, according to our official numbers, which are probably right the fuck out to lunch, by the way, we've grown by about 10%. So, everybody's saying like, well, I mean, we've got all these new people coming in, so we need to offer them the services and everything like that. And that's why our public sector's gone up so much. Our public sector has gone up at about twice the rate of our population growth.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, our private sector job growth is growing at half the rate.
Yeah. It's just a story that it links back to essentially our immigration. You look at our healthcare, you look at everything else. We are not, the only way to government created jobs aren't real jobs. They're jobs that you and I fund. So
no, they're fluff. Here's
fluff.
the thing. Okay. If you had on a scale and you've got two ends to the scale, think like roughly Laffer curve idea, right? On one end, you have 0% of people. There are no public sector jobs and everybody works in the private sector. You would have a lot of extra money rolling around. Okay. And on the other end, if you had 100% of the jobs in a country were all government jobs, nobody would be building anything. Nothing would get done. Nothing would be accomplished. Now, you can't have 0 people working in a government because then it would not be a government anymore. It would be anarchy, which, I mean, really, would it be that bad of an idea? But assuming that there's going to be a government, the further you can get towards that one side where nobody works for the government, i.e. the smallest government possible, that would be better. And we keep going the opposite direction. There's 3.5, it's something like 3.5 private sector jobs for every one public sector job now, which is astoundingly high.
You look at the leader of Brazil who got in a year ago or so. His name's Milei, however you say his name. He slashed his government by
Argentina,
sorry.
Yeah.
He took a chainsaw to his government, ripped it apart, and it's actually functioning better than it ever has. He's cut all this crap out, and he's actually, his country's turned around their economy in less than a year. So it can be done. I mean, not that Twitter was a government, but you look when Musk took it over, he slashed it by something like, what is it? 90-something percent, and it's still running. I'm still sure.
And it's running better.
Yeah, it's running better. Yeah.
Yeah. So Argentina, you know what? We're going to jump around all over the place. Argentina, of course, Argentina is in a recession. Argentina enters technical recession as job losses mount under Milei. Of course, they have a shit ton of job losses. Almost everybody in Argentina 6 months ago worked for the government.
Yes.
And they've all been fired.
Yes.
And that was artificially expanding the economy. The actual numbers were far less reflective of what the actual economic reality was.
Yeah.
Numbers are coming down to something more realistic. Look, if you have whatever it was, half the people in Argentina, say, working for the government, and you fire almost all of them,
yeah,
of course you're going to have high unemployment numbers, and of course you're going to have a recession because the government just kept on pumping money into the economy that it shouldn't have and didn't need to be there, and it made the numbers artificially high.
Yeah.
And then you have people like this idiot bitch, Mary 123459, this fake, like when people talk about the paid liberal accounts, this is guaranteed one of those. That didn't take long. Don't say we didn't tell you. Conservative cuts to spending don't fucking work. We avoided a recession in Canada with Trudeau's spending because it helps the middle class and drives the economy. These idiots always end up with the same predictable results. Well, yeah, they're predictable results. I mean, we said that from the start. Like, they're going to go through a recession and they're going to have really high unemployment because they have all these people doing nothing jobs that are no longer going to be doing those nothing jobs. This is literally just fucking common sense. And in no way is it reflective of liberal spending being a good thing.
Yeah.
But they're just grasping at whatever damn straws they can find.
Oh, yeah. Exactly.
All right. Okay. Now, I had thoughts about Biden, but I forgot what they were.
Look, we touched on it earlier about, dude's obviously got dementia right now. And we were, but I don't give a shit. Look, he's got a 50-year track record as a shitty politician, a horrible
and a shitty human being.
Shitty human being with a
he literally disowned his granddaughter and took her to court to stop her from using his last name.
Yeah. He's got
his granddaughter,
his son, his felon son, this cokehead, pedophile, who is now at the White House daily. It's like daily he's there now. Was it today or yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of when they found coke at the White House, and they still don't know whose coke it was.
Whose could it have been? Could it have been the guy who literally said in an interview that he was going through the carpet finding crumbs of Parmesan crumbs to smoke?
Yeah.
This guy. Okay. And then so after you've still got the media running protection for Biden.
Oh yeah.
Like here's the AP news. Biden at 81, often sharp and focused, but sometimes confused and forgetful. That's literally their headline.
What did you see yesterday? I thought so. I go through Telegram a lot because I get a lot of news from Telegram, because it's generally more on the ground type news for the stuff that I look at. And I saw this article saying that Biden had just told some governors that he's going to take more naps and he won't be working after 8 p.m. And I thought this has got to be like some sort of Babylon Bee thing or something.
Yeah.
So I did a quick Google and I'm like, shit, like a couple hours ago, this just got like, he's really just told these people, the president, that he's going to take more naps as opposed to however many he's taking right now. And he's not going to really work after 8. So if you're North Korea, you're like, well, I guess it's 8:05. We're safe, boys.
Yeah,
go.
We'll send the nukes.
Because Kamala's in charge.
We'll send the nukes.
Kamala's in charge right now, so that she's worse than him. Like,
that's what Trump was saying. Like, here's this video of Trump from the golf course the other day.
How did I do with the debate the other night?
Oh, amazing.
He kicked that old broken down pile of crap.
Yeah.
It's a bad guy. He just quit, He's quitting the race.
Is that right?
Yep, I got him out of the race. And that means we have Kamala. I think she's going to be better. She's so bad. She's so pathetic.
It's so amazing.
It's just so fucking bad. So I just can't imagine. But can you imagine that guy dealing with Putin and the president of China, who's a fierce person? He's a fierce man, a very tough guy. And they see them, they probably can't. But they just announced he's probably quitting.
Good. Yeah, that's amazing.
Just keep.
All right, so there's Trump, who, by the way, shoots tailor-mades, which aren't always the easiest to hit well.
He can hit anything though.
Like,
look,
Stormy?
I don't know. I don't know if Biden will drop out or not. There's a segment of that Democratic Party that will hold on to him and ride that ship. They know the ship is going down, but they would rather ride it down with him. And then you have the other branch of the Democrats who are like anything but Trump, obviously, which they all are. But I don't know what they're going to do. And Biden is stubborn. Like, he's a stubborn old and he's being handled by his wife, who's equally as stubborn.
I'm surprised that he hasn't been Arkancided yet. I'm really surprised that Hillary Clinton hasn't just, and it wouldn't take much. All you'd have to do is just have a little bit of loose carpet at the top of the stairs going up to Air Force One, and that problem just takes care of itself. And
it does.
You don't you don't have to tie him to a tree, shoot him in the chest with a shotgun with no shotgun left lying around, and then have it ruled a suicide.
No Dick Cheney.
Yeah, you don't have to shoot him in the ass while you're out hunting with him. You just, all you'd have to do is just maybe don't cut up his chicken quite as finely as you do before you feed it to him.
You don't even have to be like Obama's personal chef going swimming or anything.
Yeah.
Like
there's so many easy ways to kill a man that old and frail.
But you know what? They're not going to Clinton him because Kamala is worse. And that's the only saving grace for Biden right now, is that his replacement is actually worse than him.
No, just think about that for a minute. How bad must that be? Just a kick in the junk. If you're Kamala Harris and you're like this doddering, senile old man who has shat himself on international television multiple times, is seen as a better candidate than I am.
She was polling at less than 1% when she was running, as a candidate 4 years ago or whatever time it was now. That she was, and her unfavorables, like how much she was actually disliked, were in like the 70s, 80s, which is.
And then they had Tulsi Gabbard. They could have had Tulsi Gabbard as VP.
They could have had a pylon as VP, and they would have been like, you know what? The pylon is in. We're taking the pylon. Yeah. I don't know that he's actually going to leave. I don't think he will. I think Trump is kind of he shit talks. That's what he does. But he brings up a good point. These are the people that are talking to world leaders like Xi, Putin. You think they take him? They don't take him seriously. That's why Putin rolled when he rolled. He knew he had 4 years essentially to roll, and that's what he's done. Now, I don't know if you saw the interview. I don't know which cast it was from, but these were two dudes that used to work for Trump doing negotiations with the Taliban. And
it's funny you should mention that.
There it is. They're there.
President Trump was still the president. President Trump wanted to get out of Afghanistan, but he wanted a conditions-based withdrawal, meaning that you do what we tell you to do, and then we will start pulling troops back slowly as long as you abide by our rules. It's President Trump and Mike Pompeo, and they are talking to Taliban leadership in the room, and they had one translator in the room. President Trump looked at the Taliban leader and said this: I want to leave Afghanistan, but it's going to be a conditions-based withdrawal. And translator translated. And he said, if you harm a hair on a single American, I'm going to kill you. And translator goes, and Trump goes, tell him that. Tell him what I said. Reached in his pocket, pulled out a satellite photo of the leader of the Taliban's home and handed it to him.
Shut up.
Got up and walked out the room.
Oh, that's how you handle negotiations.
That is how you do
it. You be that right amount of crazy where they're like, I don't know, maybe he's full of shit, or maybe he's gonna drone strike my family.
And look, even so, Putin in an interview, because you remember now Zelensky's all over Trump about how are you going to stop the war? You keep saying you're going to stop the war. We need to know how you're going to stop the war because it's our war. Well, for one, you just turn off the money tap, the war's over. But Putin yesterday in an interview was asked for his reaction to Trump saying that he will stop the war, because this got brought up at the debate the other day. And so Putin said, look, I'm interested in hearing what Trump has to say. I respect what he has to say, and we can work within a framework and end this war. Basically, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said nobody's approached us about ending the war. So if Trump's got a solution to this, let's hear it, kind of a thing. So it's one of those things where who do you want now? It is also funny that if the best they can do is run Biden versus Trump in America, they've got other issues. But I'll say this, Trump was effective as a president. You can hate him, and a lot of people do, but he was effective.
He spent way too much money, but I mean, everything else most everything else. I like the idea of him going in for his second and final term and just going scorched earth on the swamp. I think that would be absolutely wonderful.
Yeah,
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
All right, we're jumping around here. So, groceries in Canada explained. Now I got to find where this is because everything's all out of order. But Sylvain Charlebois, who's been on the SNP before, talks about, this is an interesting article. He breaks down exactly why nobody's interested in entering the grocery market in Canada and why Canadian grocers are looking to expand outside of Canada, which is really interesting because, I mean, they've got it locked up here. There's only a few entities where you can get groceries without, by the way, folks, going to things like farmers markets where there's actual farmers, or just going directly to people who grow your food, which is also an option. But it's shoot, I had a few interesting things I wanted to pull from it, but it's hard to highlight things when you're clicking through. One of the things I thought was really interesting was they talked about the red tape and how, for example, you can't transport alcohol at night in Alberta, and you can't transport alcohol during the day in BC.
I did not know that.
But they're right next to each other. So transporting alcohol from Alberta to BC or from BC to Alberta ends up being a little bit fucking difficult because you have these different rules for adjacent provinces, which are supposed to have free trade between them. And it's exactly the kind of law that I would expect our governments to put in place.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
And to not fix.
Yeah.
And you'd think that one of them, like the Alberta has this minister of red tape reduction. So I think it was the first time I was ever on Sean's podcast, like way before the mashup. He said, well, if you could have some cabinet position in the government, what would you say? And I said, it would be the minister of getting rid of red tape.
Yeah.
And then a few months later, Alberta came out with this minister of red tape reduction. I thought it was really interesting and funny, and I really would have liked them to have given me a bit of goddamn credit for it. But aside from that, this is exactly the kind of thing where you'd say, okay, well, look, why don't we just get rid of the stupid rules? And why don't we get rid of the stupid rules in between provinces? And this is the kind of shit that brings up the cost for your supply chain. And yeah, that's basically it.
Well, that also a very Canadian story. Like, and you know what? I'd be curious to see what red tape has been cut. Like, where's the benchmark? Where's the scorecard?
So they actually do have a website where they keep track of it. We haven't really talked about it that much because the last time I looked at it, there was nothing really mind blowing. Like with all the amount of stupid rules, like fundraisers for the AGLC. If you want to have a lottery for a fundraiser for a nonprofit, you can use it for operational expenses, but you can't use that money for capital expenses.
Yeah.
So you can use it to pay for your power and your gas for an existing building, but you can't use that money you gain to pay for a new building.
Yeah.
Which is just stupid. And then so Kit Scotty went through this with their Clunker Dunker fundraiser, and that's how I know about that one specifically. But there's all kinds of silly rules like that.
Oh, yeah.
And you're like, well, just explain to me the logic behind it, okay? And if you can't explain the logic, move up the food chain until somebody says, well, look, this is just how the rule is. You say, okay, well, you know what? If you can't give me a good reason for it, can you at least give me an exemption? But
even the exemption would be nice. Yeah.
Yeah. The NDP are not a serious party. Gonna blow your guys' goddamn brains on this one. So this is just a follow-up from in Alberta. Nenshi got 85% of the popular vote.
Yeah.
So this guy who's never been affiliated with the NDP before, he actually had to get a special exemption to even run because he wasn't a member. He goes in and beats a bunch of women. and he gets 85%. And then Sarah Hoffman, who people had kind of assumed was going to be the logical winner,
Yeah, I
got
thought
something like 2%. And then the best one, I think, was, or 4%, sorry. And then Kathleen Ganley did 8% out of nowhere. And I think a lot of it had to do with their polling numbers. During the run, there was a poll that we talked about it. Go back a month or something like that. You can find it. But basically, it said, if this person was the leader, how likely would you be to support the NDP? And they went through all the people going through the leadership. The worst one by far was Gail McGowan, who didn't even stick it out to the end because he couldn't fundraise enough to do it.
Yeah.
President of CUPE. So, but Nenshi was the least bad. All of the people would have the NDP polling lower, but Nenshi was the least bad. And now you have the Conservatives being projected right now at up 11 seats and the NDP down 11 seats after this. And Edmonton, which was an absolute stronghold of NDP, is losing around the outsides. Calgary, which was contentious but favoring NDP, is now kind of a wash, and they're nowhere else other than Banff and Lethbridge in the entire province. This is the problem with democracy, by the way. You look at this, and even though this map is almost entirely fucking blue, with one semi-rural riding being Banff, coming out orange, and yet there's still enough power in the two small places to almost throw the whole thing.
Yeah, and that's Well, it's funny when you look at a map of the U.S. for their electoral stuff, and you see that there's just the little blue fringes around both coastlines. The rest of it's red.
Yeah,
for the most part, and it's. I mean, look at the country we have as a whole, and it's something like 78% underneath that red line in Ontario control.
Yep.
70%
the entire country,
our big old country here.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
well, the maple leaf.
Yeah,
the maple trees don't grow west of Ontario, and yet that's our fucking flag.
Yeah.
Right. You look at this stuff. You've got these people, like you're saying, the GTA or the Ottawa, Kitchener, Waterloo, Toronto, and Montreal. They decide all our elections before the polls have even closed in Manitoba. Yeah. They'll call who won our federal election.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, geographically, half the fucking country hasn't even finished voting yet, and they're like, "Well, don't even bother. It's already decided."
Yeah.
Right. And this place is so goddamn broken. So I'm a separatist. I feel like Canada should be cut into as many small pieces as possible, and everybody can figure their own shit out. And if you've got some good ideas, run with them. And if you've got garbage ideas, you're not bringing everybody else down. Mm-hmm. As somebody who has fought for this country and for the ideas that this country represents, and who has a lot of friends who died doing this.
Yeah.
How does it feel when people say, I don't want to be part of this place anymore?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. For the reason that everybody asks it, I guess is usually the same reason. And look, this country turned its back on me well before I turned my back on it. I also think that separating Alberta should separate. I do. I 100% do. This country, I think even if Pierre gets in, are we salvageable? No, I don't think we are. Will he slow things down or maybe fix a few things? I think he will. I think he genuinely will. Maybe I'm being a little bit naive, but I think he genuinely will. Try to anyway.
We'll drive off the cliff at a medium pace.
Yeah, there's that too. Can Alberta do it? If we separate out, can we make a run of it with our industries here and kind of establish ourselves as the powerhouse we could be? Yeah, we could. And people will be like, well, Canada's been around for 150. I don't give a fuck. Go to Europe and read some European history. Those things change borders all the time. They change borders. You know, they've changed borders so many times. Our history is new. So we think that this 157 years mean something? Well, it does. I mean, Canada was born in World War I, essentially. Like when the Canadian soldiers did what they did. You know, Canada became a nation, not technically, but they did that. That was
they were on the map,
yes.
But World War I put them on the map.
Yeah. And World War II, much the same thing, you know, kind of reestablished. We had the third largest Navy in the world at one point after World War II. Third largest Navy in the world. We couldn't float a canoe right now. You know, Afghanistan, for a very short period of time, Canadians, again, around the world, at least in the military spheres, were recognized as like, these are war fighters again. And it almost takes that recognition to make a country again. And I'm not saying let's go to war and do this again, but we don't have any of that now. And worse, we have an economy that's being purposely sabotaged by Ottawa. We should be the economic driving force in the world right now with all our resources. We aren't. And that's on purpose. We can do it here in Alberta. We can maybe team up with parts of Saskatchewan and parts of BC, you know, carve out what we want. It would probably be a bit messy, and I don't mean violently messy. I just mean
it wouldn't be the clear-cut provincial lines, because BC would say, take us with you, and we would say, we don't want Vancouver.
No.
We'll take the north.
Yeah.
You cut it in half, and we'll take the top half, and then the bottom half can figure itself out, whether it still wants to be part of Canada and be the only remaining powerhouse and pay for everything, or it can become its own little micronation, kind of a Singapore type thing. And it would be the same thing on Manitoba, because Manitoba would be like, well, we're not going to get as many free shit anymore because there's no more Alberta and Saskatchewan money. So why don't you guys take us with you? And be like, no, you guys fucking suck.
Yeah.
But we'll take the top half, and we'll take access to Hudson Bay and Winnipeg. That can go back to being, remember, I'm sure you've probably heard of the whole postage stamp province that Manitoba used to be. That postage stamp province can stay with what used to be Canada, because we're going to keep the name, by the way, because if we pay the mortgage, it's our fucking house.
Mm-hmm.
And Ottawa and fucking Quebec can figure out what the hell they want to call their new country.
Look, and I love this country. I do, like pretty much all of us do. I've done things for this country that I did. I've lost a lot of friends for this country, and not one of them would have regretted what they did. I know this.
Mm-hmm.
But I also have to look to the future for my kids, and my kids will not have a future in Canada as it is. And people will have, then leave, go to another country. Well, there's nowhere else to go. Look, there's no safe bastion somewhere. There isn't some all shining island somewhere that we can all run to and be like, oh, we figured it out. No, we have to figure it out here. We have to carve out our chunk here and take this here. And if they have to do a referendum on it, let's vote on a referendum on it. And if I'm wrong and people say, oh, we're not doing this, okay, I'm wrong, and I guess we'll just go down at a medium pace driving off the cliff. But I think most people here, when I talk to normies out here, they're like, why in the fuck are we letting Ottawa decide this? Why are we letting Ottawa decide this? Go back to 1776 when the Americans said, you know what, we're not letting Britain decide this anymore. We're going to do our own thing. Well, we're letting Ottawa.
That was over a 2% tax, by the way.
Yeah. 2% tax.
2% tax.
We just talked about buying and selling homes here a few times, and before we got on the air, could you imagine now? Because the Liberals are really floating this idea now, going after your home equity.
The equity tax.
Right. So, for me, that was a large portion of my ability to retire, like that and canceling Disney. Disney Plus. Yep. Huge financial savings there. Thanks, Freeland. But can you imagine now if they were to, and I'm not rich. Most of us aren't rich people, but that amount of money, I have a level of freedom with the money I was able to save over time at my own risk, buying and selling property, same as you, same as everybody that's listening probably, and everybody's in their own situation. But can you imagine now if the government takes a chunk of that, like a large chunk of that, and you try and gift that? Then there's that woman who was just recently in the news who got dinged by CRA 40 grand for
Yeah.
trying to gift property.
Mhm.
Are you kidding
To her
me?
grandkids.
To a grandkid. This is, if Canada was built on anything, I mean, it's built on many things, but being able to pass on a legacy, property as a legacy, but that's what they're trying to do away with now. And you're starting to see on Twitter a lot of these Muppets come out of the woodwork saying, well, if you've got a 4-bedroom home and you're a boomer, you should think about downsizing.
Yeah, you should be able to. You should be willing to give up some of those bedrooms to people who need them.
Yeah,
I don't give a shit if you want them or not. I fucking paid for them.
I paid for them. And this is where we're heading. So when people say, well, Chuck, how can you killed for this country? You know, you did this you did all these, how can you think about breaking up this country? Well, that's how. My kids have no future in this country. Mm-hmm. They don't. My kids, you know, they're bright, they're employed, they have money in their bank, but they don't have.
Oh, they're far right supremacists.
Really, essentially, yeah, they're traditional supremacists. Yeah, we own cats and dogs too. Like hunting, and you know, we're crazy. We're crazy right wingers, but there's no future for them. So my own future is fairly secure. But even if I try to pass on my legacy to my kids, like my financial legacy, I mean, how much is the government going to take of that I earned? No, then break up the country, have a referendum. I'm not saying let's go
no. If you want to keep going, you keep going.
This doesn't have to be a messy, violent thing. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that at all. I've been to enough of those places in my life not to ever want that here. And I don't think we would get there, or at least I hope we wouldn't. I would hope we'd have a referendum like Quebec did many years ago. And you take the vote for what it's worth, and you go by the wishes of the people. And then at the end of that, if you're here in Alberta or the West and you're like, well, I didn't sign on for this, I want to be Canadian, then go east. Go east. But we're done paying for the East. We're done paying for your shitty heat pumps that they had to do a recall on.
Yeah.
You know, we pay
that
for
ended
their
up
heat
on
pumps.
the cutting room floor this week.
We pay for their heat pumps, and then they get a carbon. They don't even get whatever the federal.
They get an exemption.
And we here in the West who paid for that, because believe me, they didn't pay for shit out there, because we still pay for everything out there. We don't get the exemption. Are you kidding me? Like, then why are we part of Canada if we're not going to be all treated the same? Because we're not being treated the same.
Nope.
You want my wallet open, but tell me I can't have any of that money back? Like, no.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Like, if Alberta, Saskatchewan, pick one, existed as a separate country today, and Canada went to them and said, we want you guys to join. All right, well, what do you got to offer? Well, you get a vote. Oh, cool. So we get to help decide who's in charge? No. Like, it's just a formality. We're going to decide who the fuck is in charge, and we're going to decide how the money gets spent. You get a vote, but it doesn't count for anything. You say, well, that doesn't sound awesome. Okay, well, I mean, you're going to make it worth our while financially, though, right? No, we're going to take literal billions from you every year. Okay, all right, but we're gonna, but we're gonna have coastal access for our exports, right? No, we're going to stymie it in legislation. We're going to unilaterally shut down applications, and we're going to make it so that you can't get anything fucking built. Okay, well, that doesn't sound awesome. Okay, but you know, our retirement, right? The money that we're putting away for retirement, we're at least going to have access to that once it's all said and done, right? No, most of that is going to go to New Brunswick, actually. But we'll give you a tiny stipend. Okay, so you want to join or what?
Yeah.
Like, nobody in their right fucking mind would take the deal that the prairie provinces have right now with Canada. No. And that's the thing. In a relationship, like, let's say me and you were dating, Chuck.
You'd be so lucky.
we would want to, every day, we would want to say, okay, well, you know what? I want to be the kind of person, and I want this to be the kind of situation that the other person wants to continue to be with. Right? Because you don't want to say, okay, well, look, I'm not going to let you leave. That's an abusive relationship. You would
Mhm.
want to have it so that both parties are trying to make it as good as possible for everybody involved so that everybody wants to stay together. You wouldn't say, look, I'm just going to be in fucking charge and I'm going to waste all the fucking money on everything, leave
Mhm.
you nothing, and I'm going to treat you like shit.
Yeah.
And if you want to leave, you're the asshole. That's an
Yeah.
abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And nobody
Well,
would want to take that.
And, you know, I still have a lot of Eastern friends, you know, Ontario and east of that, and family out there. And they can't understand the mindset that we have here of being like, we're kind of over it. We're over it. And you explain essentially what you explain in a roundabout way, or my own way of explaining it. And I'm like, why would we want to stay? We don't get a vote. We really don't get a vote. By population, we should be, you know, comparable with representation, at least to what these East Coast provinces have.
Well,
Like,
PEI has one MP for every 32,000 people, and we're the worst. Alberta is the worst, and it's something like one MP for every 120,000.
yes.
So
Yeah.
roughly speaking, I get the fact that there's some rounding there, but roughly speaking, a vote in Prince Edward Island counts 4 times as much
Yes. Exactly.
as a vote in Alberta.
Exactly. And that's a problem for me. And people don't either understand that or don't care about it. But if you're East, you don't really give a shit because you're big.
Because you're getting free money. Who
You're
cares?
getting free money. They don't care. If you're Quebec, man, this is a great go for you. If you're ever an Eastern province, and they're beautiful provinces and great people. I'm not knocking that, but you're being funded by Alberta. You've been being funded by Alberta for a very long time. And I'm just kind of over that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'm over it because my kids don't have a future in this country the way it is anymore.
No. Okay. Well, let's move on to lighter things. I rack Chuck's brain about the Lieutenant General.
You're talking about the new CDS.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Canadian Armed Forces is proud to welcome Lieutenant General Carignan as our next Chief of Defense Staff.
Yeah.
Lieutenant General's career spans over 35 years, including commanding 2 combat engineer regiments and the 2nd Canadian Division, as well as NATO mission Iraq. Now, tell me anything and everything you want to about this.
Okay, so there will be. I'll get into it as much as I can right now. There are. Look, she failed upwards. She failed so horribly that they had to create a DEI position for her to basically look after misogyny in the army or whatever the fuck they called it. Some made-up position that hadn't existed. They gave it to her to basically woke the army even further than it was being woke. Her time in Iraq will come out. I know in the background right now there are still serving members who have to be very careful, who were there, who I know, who have, some of them are speaking to certain media.
Can you give us the scoop? How much of a scoop can you give us?
I'll say this. She didn't perform very well when things got rough there. And essentially was more worried about getting her gear out than humans at a certain point. Americans had to intervene and basically say, get back to work. It's shocking to me that the mainstream media hasn't done anything about this. Like this, here's the thing. Anytime there's like combat or some major event overseas, there's always generally media around. And if they're not, they're, even if it's American or Canadian or the combination of the two, like this kind of a situation, the stories get out. They always get out. That this one didn't get out is mostly because most of those guys are still in. Like this was a fairly recent thing that happened.
Really?
Well, it was
she doesn't look young. I assume that the story that you're telling was fairly old one.
I'm going to get the year wrong, but it was like 2020-ish or something like that. It was when Trump droned that Iranian bad guy. So it'd have been,
Oh, yes.
was it 2019, 2020?
Yeah,
somewhere in there?
something like that.
So things started to go slip sideways really hard in Iraq at that time, because that's what happens. There's always a residual follow-on effect.
Mhm.
Her performance was, all I'm going to say, because I'm pretty sure the story will actually break sooner than later, and I mean pretty soon, is she did not perform well. Very, very, very poorly. How much of that? Look, I know one of the guys who was there, and if his story comes out the way it's been told, and his isn't the only version of it I've heard, yeah, I don't know how they're picking these people. I just don't. The thing about being in the military, especially at that senior officer corps level, your whole resume is there. Like, it's there. You know, you want to go ask somebody about what this senior officer did overseas. You can go to any other host nation, any other like partner nation, I should say, and ask them. You can ask all the staff around. You have access to all their emails and correspondence. It's all there. You can find out how they did. Like, this stuff is all there. You know, I know that there'll be pushback, like, oh, it's not provable. It's not provable.
Yeah, and it's misogyny.
Yeah, some bullshit like that. And I'm like, you know what? If she was I don't care that she's a woman. I don't give a shit. There were lots of great female officers in the military. Don't care about that. It's that she failed so hard they created a position for her. Like, people can look at that. They can go and see the position they made up for her. Like, and now this. It's another reason why. How did the Harbinger Sajan or whatever? How he got through to where he got through to? I can't. But part of it is it's a very closed community, the military. It's so unless you want to go digging and actually asking, which shocks me that media don't.
I mean, it's what they get paid to do, but
you would think. So go find out what this guy did overseas. But you know what they did? They ran fluff articles calling him the badass and the architect. Who's the architect? And then that's when people got upset. You know, you want to call him a badass? Go ahead. The guy never pulled the trigger in his life. He doesn't know how many pounds a square inch takes. He'd never been on a 2A range, but he's a badass. Are you kidding me? But so guys like me were like, oh, fuck, look, they're running this Muppet here, so they got to fluff him. But then the architect thing, that's when guys who were actually there said he had nothing to do. He's stealing valor at this point now, which he owned up to. He admitted he did. I know so many great officers, fantastic men and women who could have done such great jobs, but
they didn't play the politics.
They didn't play the politics. Nope.
Okay. This is our Independence Day. So July 4th just happened. Kind of a big day for people down in the South. They all shit their pants when they meet the Pope on July 4th. You know, it's an established tradition. And here, by the way, is Mark Zuckerberg playing Bruce Springsteen, wakeboarding, drinking a beer, and waving the American flag while wearing a tuxedo.
America?
Mark Zuckerberg, of all people.
I don't get it either. I don't know what to say unless the lizard people are really trying to fit in now. I don't know.
Well, they are amphibious, so there's that.
Very true. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's almost becoming vogue again to be a patriot. So maybe the left is trying to grab that. I don't know. It's unusual. It's good to see.
Yeah. Yeah. You like to see people being happy about where they're from.
Yeah.
But it definitely is. It is interesting.
It's interesting.
All right. Danielle Smith irritates twos of the week. Every goddamn week, Chuck. So now Alberta is launching new AAIP pathway for law enforcement professionals, which means that if you get into law enforcement as an immigrant, they will fast track your citizenship.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know where to go with this aside from that.
Well, here it's interesting because I know several British people who've immigrated here years ago, and it was difficult, really difficult for them to, and they're in law enforcement, very difficult for them to get into law enforcement. As a British immigrant becoming a Canadian citizen, it was like barrier. These were all people who had several of them had former either military or law enforcement experience in Britain, sometimes like both. But if you come here from some other place and you're not even actually a Canadian citizen and you want to go get into our law enforcement, much like the military, now we're going to fast track you. And that shouldn't be a thing. It should never be a thing.
It absolutely shouldn't. And here's it's been an ongoing issue for several years that our law enforcement has been seen as an increasingly unappealing job.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those jobs where anybody who would be good at it doesn't want anything to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And now you get off the boat. Here's your gun. Here's your badge. Here's your horse. You're going to Ottawa.
Yeah.
It's not the way to run things. Actually make it something. Instead of trying to do this, why don't you focus that time, energy, and money towards making law enforcement something that people would be proud to do?
That's the problem. Yeah.
I was at this I'd gotten off early one day and there was this job fair nearby, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll just pop in real quick, see if there's anything interesting. So, amongst all the other booths and stuff, right next to each other, there was a fire department and the RCMP. And the fire department one was lined up all the way down the aisle.
Yeah.
If I'd have wanted to talk to them, I'd have probably been waiting an hour.
Yeah.
And the RCMP guy was just sitting there looking like the Maytag repairman.
Yeah.
Just bored, twiddling his thumbs, scrolling his phone. Nobody even stopping by to say hi.
Well, and it comes down to atmospherics and reputation, and we've seen my brother's a cop. I have family who are cops and friends, lots of ex-military buddies of mine who are cops across the country. They feel it, they know it. Everybody who's got a friend or family member who's in law enforcement, they feel it, they know. The ones that have a sense of self-awareness, they know that pedestal, and they should have been, they need to be on some extra layer of a pedestal to have that, respect and everything that they should have. But it's lost. It's gone now.
It's totally gone. It's unbelievable.
And so who are you going to attract? You're not going to attract somebody who wants to do well or do well for their community. Most of the guys women and guys that I knew that got into it to do something for their community. They really did, at a fundamental level, thought they'd be giving back to their community, and that's how it should be. That's not the case when you start to do this immigration.
No, this is not going to solve any of.
No.
This is a Band-Aid, but it's not even so much a Band-Aid. There's a hole in the boat, and so you cut out a bigger hole to patch over the small hole.
That's what it is.
Well, now you've got a bigger hole in the boat, which is what government does whenever they solve any fucking problem.
Yeah.
And Danielle Smith, I don't know what the hell happened. I said from the start, I was like, this is a woman whose legacy in politics is an out of nowhere floor crossing that completely decimated the province for half a decade.
Yeah.
And we're going to pick her to be in charge of things. I have qualms. And now, like every week, there's something new.
Mm-hmm.
And it isn't really that hard. If she wants a roadmap, what could she do to do a good job in her position? Well, what if she just did some of the shit she said she was going to do when she was trying to get people to support her in her pursuit of that position? That's all she has to do. And she has done none of it. Yeah. And instead, she's going backwards and doing random shit like this. And every week, that's why it's the Danielle Smith Irritates Twos of the week. Like, conspiracy theory. We're going to put on a tinfoil hat here. She crosses the floor. She's basically looking down the barrel of being the next premier. And out of nowhere, for no particular reason, she crosses the floor and does this media scrum, whatever, press conference, where she basically looks like a hostage. You know, she's got that I'm reading a script while someone's got a gun to my head look in her eyes. And then that never got really, that whatever the hell happened with that never saw the light of day. And she goes back and tries to be revisionist about it. Well, you know, I knew that we needed to unite the right-wing parties to face the left-wing threat, which is bullshit, because the highest the NDP had ever pulled before that was 15%.
Yeah.
You could have split the Wild Rose and the Conservatives down the middle at about 35% each, and they would have had more than double the left-wing support, and it would have been a sweep regardless.
Yeah.
But to go back and revision it looks even worse. And so now it's just like every week it's something new. And part of me wants to say, what the hell does somebody have on her that she goes in, says she's going to do these things, and then when she gets in, does absolutely none of them, and in fact, does the exact opposite in a lot of cases. And when she does try and half-ass roll out some of them, she drops the ball so badly that you think it has to be on purpose. At what point do you say that maybe somebody is coercing her?
Definitely a possibility. We know politics is that dirty, but I wonder too, with her, is she just lazy about it at this point, and she's thinking, well, I'm not the NDP, so blue Alberta,
medium voter theorem.
Yeah, so she'll get, you know, the blue voters are going to vote for me just because I'm conservative. And you know what, we proved we wouldn't do that with Redford. You know, we either didn't show up or people actually voted orange just to get rid of Redford, or to get rid of her.
Prentice.
It'll happen to Danielle too. Like, she doesn't understand. Like, we're paying attention now more than ever. Like, this is a more than ever paying attention thing. It was okay when we were all kind of making money and living was easier because we weren't being taxed to death.
Yeah, it didn't really matter that much.
Didn't really matter.
Oh no, there's an extra 2%. Oh, I guess you know what? I'm still gonna go on the vacation.
Yes.
But I'm not going to drink 7 bottles of champagne on the flight.
Yeah,
it's only going to be 5.
This is it. This is exactly it. But it matters now. We're all paying attention now, because I ain't taking vacations right now, and you know, everybody's only living because they're really paying attention to their bank accounts and what's going on in our government. And she's better wise up, or she's not going to make another turn.
Well, she's got the leadership review coming up in November, and like I said before, if she's got something to support, maybe she'll get some support. But in the meantime, what the fuck is she doing? Because it's not this.
Yeah.
All right. The gays aren't much in a fight.
Where are we going with this one?
Thousands sing, dance, and celebrate at Pride Parade until protesters strand marchers and floats mid-route. So what happened was the Toronto Gay Pride Parade got busted up by about 30 Palestinian protesters.
Yeah.
You have got all these people on floats and walking around in stilts, and all these people dressed up like gay Maori tribesmen. And 30 Palestinian protesters shut the whole thing down? Like, dude, you are literally in gay New Zealand battle garb right now.
Yeah.
With purple sunglasses on, and you cannot fight off 30 people.
They're pretty fierce.
And so anyway, what ended up happening was that the two pet causes of the left, the gays and the Palestinians, got in the lightest possible dust up, and all the gay people had to tuck their tail between their legs and go home. Which, I mean, was easy for some because they were probably already tucking regardless.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Could you imagine if that was like 10 guys in plaid shirts, or some extreme church group sitting out there? it would have been media for weeks.
Like, just imagine it's, I don't know, me, you, and a dozen of our closest friends walking down the street protesting whatever stupid thing the liberals have done lately. Pick one. And then a bunch of people get in our way. Like, look, I appreciate the enthusiasm. This is hilarious, but we're gonna need you to move.
Yeah. I don't understand it either.
Right. The reasonable cost of online censorship. Creating proposed online harms regulators could cost $200 million, according to the budget watchdog. So the parliamentary budget officer estimates that staffing up the new regulators in the Liberals' Online Harms Act will cost around $200 million over 5 years. It does later go on to say that doesn't take into account the out-of-pocket cost reductions that'll be incurred because they're presumably going to be able to keep the penalties that they fine people with. So not only is it going to cost $200 million for this bullshit idiot stuff, but they've got a budgeted incentive to fine as many people as possible now too. This is basically the radar speed trap of free speech.
And that's we're paying them to censor ourselves. Yeah, that's where we are as a country. Yeah. It and the incentivization part of it is almost the scariest part of it. It's like people always wonder at Veterans Affairs, like, how is it that they can deny your claims? Like, just deny, say it's not service related. And like, well, because they're incentivized for the amount of money they save by not giving you claims. Like, we know this, that
individually or as an organization?
As an organization, and probably at the senior management level, they are incentivized as well. Like, they get bonused out, I'm guessing. Like all government.
So you don't ever get to see what the KPIs are for bonus structure?
No, not to my knowledge. I could be wrong.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, like, take my hearing, which is horrible after 21 years and lots of gun battles and bombs.
Both ears or just your one?
Both. Okay. The right ear is worse, but the left ear is not good either. So
do you shoot left?
No, but I've had several concussive events overseas that really affected the right ear. They said, no, it's not certain. So my audiologist is like, well, you need hearing aids. Your hearing's so bad, like, so Ottawa, like, Veterans Affairs is like, nope, not service related. I'm like, I'm documented as having been, in dozens of fights here. Like, I'm on video in dozens of fights. I've been blown up on video, like, so it's like, so somebody's getting paid back. Somebody's getting a kickback. We know this, like, we know. Like, and that's the same for this kind of thing. You incentivize people to grab money. That's what they're going to do. They're going to find a way to do it.
Jesus Christ. I wonder if anybody's like, I know you've talked about the hearing loss with Sean before, but that bonus structure, I wonder if anybody's tried to access information that.
I don't know. Probably, maybe somebody smarter than me's tried to do it. I mean, yeah, I would hope. Because
you would think that, it's never even really occurred to me before, but now that we're going through this, like, even the CBC, excuse me. Sorry, I'm just getting over this cold. It was everything COVID was supposed to be.
Biden just had that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we smashed Medicare.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. So anyway, even CBC or any management or anybody who's eligible for a bonus that's government funded, I want to see those KPIs.
I do too. I do too.
Across the board, but especially Veterans Affairs.
Yeah. Well, why do you think they were offering MAID? They're still offering MAID left and right. You don't have to pay off these veterans.
Did you get offered MAID yet?
No, they have not. I honestly, my caseworker, and I'm fortunate to have one, has been brilliant. But he's only got so much control over when the board sits and they're like, they look at my MRIs for my hips or knees or back or whatever, and they're like, or all this stuff that they get from the doctor, and they're like, not service related. Like they have granted a couple because there's like, you can't dispute sometimes what an X-ray or MRI says, and then correspond that to specific events, you know, like they do. But the hearing loss one shocked me. Like that one shocked me. Yeah, but whatever.
You didn't hear that one coming.
I did not even see it coming.
Happy news. All right. So this is a bit of a story here. I didn't bother fact checking it, but it just sounds wonderful. This is Frank, and he has had a coffee stand at the top of the steps at Bethnal Green Tube for as long as I can remember. This is in London. When the new restaurant/coffee shop next door opened alongside with another high street outlet opening across the street, Frank suddenly found that his license from the council had been revoked and he was chucked off his stand. I believe it was to make way for these new shops to take his regular custom. They didn't need him in the way of gaining maximum profit, so Frank was gone. Well, the locals were having none of it, and a petition started demanding his return. How dare they do this to him? How dare these people smash his business and leave him with nothing? After a lot of pressure, the council backed down, and Frank had his license and pitch returned to him. But sadly, by that time, Frank had sold his equipment to feed his family and try to survive. So he gets his business back on paper, but he's already sold it off.
Mm-hmm.
So the good people of Bethnal Green started crowdfunding, and here's the result. Frank back in business on his old pitch with brand new equipment and even a little hut now to shelter him from the rain. He is truly the happiest man in East London, and it's wonderful to see. It really goes to show if we all stick together, stand up to them, and just say no, the little guy can win. If you're in Bethnal Green, come have a coffee with this lovely man. And so there it is. You can see it if you're looking. It's Frank's Coffee. I wish to thank all my customers for all your support. It says on the side, it says Bethnal Green's best loved coffee, something, somebody's blocking it. And so anyway, yeah, the community stood behind this guy who had a long-standing business that got fucked over by a corrupt town council. And they eventually got enough pushback that they went back on it. Now, interesting thing, to be fair, though, this is probably one of the first instances that I have ever heard of that a petition actually got something done.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah.
Here's the other thing. If you have sensitive eyes, maybe just don't watch the screen for a little bit. But French feminists are mopping topless to protest right-wing success in elections. Finally, a protest I can support. And so there's a bunch of women in skirts with their boobers out doing a whole bunch of mopping and cleaning right by the Eiffel Tower. Now,
if they do this, they go topless for every protest they're in, and it's another French thing, I guess. I don't know. And it's funny they're protesting the right wing, which is a female leader. You'd think they'd be all on board for it. It's just they have to protest something. Yeah.
Yes, but I will say the female leader gets in. What's his French ass gets out. Macron, and within a day of the new right-wing female leader getting in, you've already got topless women cleaning in the country. You love to see democracy in action.
It is. The votes matters.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just about it for us. Oh, community events, community notes. Sorry, I totally dropped the ball on this. Let's bring this over. We have got Sean Newman asked if we could mention that he is touring all around. He's in BC right now, and he's going all the way down to Idaho. And if anybody is roughly on the way and they want to reach out to him, he'd definitely pop in for a coffee or something like that. Tarek Alnaga, my buddy, went pro team roping this year. He was at Airdrie. Me and a few other people went to watch him, cheer him on, and he fell off his fucking horse.
I saw him post about that. Yeah.
Anyway, good on him, though. I'm still pretty proud of him, but I do have to mock him a little bit and the horse he rode in on.
Adam Stock, it's great that he chose Alberta as his home. He's like, he kind of he went full cowboy, and I it's good to see. It's heartwarming to see, right? Like he's embraced this place, and making Alberta what it is.
He basically is, I don't know, he's everything that you would think about Alberta, provided, of course, that you don't live in Ottawa.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur, hardworking, gets
Mhm.
into rodeo, friendly, great guy to go have a beer with.
Yeah.
Like he's one of the best people to go have a beer with that you ever. Absolutely. He's just class act up and down.
Mhm.
All right. Adam Stock Music Festival, August 16th and 17th. Julian Austin, BCDC, Sweet Tequila, Braden King, Stonegate, and Putting on the Foil. And that's in Sundre. And that's about all we got for community notes. It is Airborne Friday, by the way. So shout out to Jamie if you're still listening. And Coops 2 is 873 days at this point. Other than that, you got anything else for us, Chuck?
No, I appreciate you having me on. And Sean, I hope you're having a safe trip, buddy, and you have a lot of fun out there.
Yeah, if you never come back, I'm fine with that. All right. This, I think, is the longest mashup yet. So,
we went a while.
We did. So thank you very much for that, Chuck.
Yeah, buddy.
Thanks, everybody.
See ya.
How do I end this damn thing? Sean that pushes the button.
See ya.